Hey, what is up guys, Murgaman4 here, and after a very long wait, Doctor Who is finally back. It's been 13 months since Jodie Whittaker regenerated in The Power of the Doctor, the longest I've ever had to wait for a new episode, and man does it feel good to have Doctor Who back as we enter a brand new, well, kind of new era, welcoming back Russell T Davies as the showrunner and head writer, and David Tennant and Catherine Tate as the Doctor and Donna Noble. Now, I will admit, I have been rather hesitant about this. There's no denying that all of them are very talented in what they do, and their original run on the show was a huge success. And it's clear that RTD came back wanting to make the show a huge success again. Now, my hesitancy is not with the quality of what we were going to get, because I knew that they would all be able to deliver on the quality, but more just the freshness of it, because one of the most exciting things for me of a brand new era is that unknown factor, not being familiar with what to expect, and being 60th anniversary specials, I don't think we can quite fairly judge yet whether or not RTD is bringing something fresh to the table, because these specials are obviously playing off of nostalgia. The purpose of it is to bring us back to Series 4, even if it is slightly different. But while I did enjoy the Star Beast, I will say it hasn't really done much to lessen that concern from me. The episode did still very much feel like classic RTD. And again, that's enjoyable, but not really what I was hoping for. And I mean, in some aspects, it is good, because RTD has brought back all of his good qualities, but to the same degree, I don't think his first run was flawless, and this episode has also demonstrated that he still maintains some of those original flaws that I'm not a fan of, and I'll go into detail on that in a bit. But I will admit the irony in my opinions here when it comes to freshness, in that this episode is of course adapted from the 1980 Fourth Doctor comic strip, Doctor Who and the Star Beast, and that was something I was very excited about. I have always liked the idea of bringing aspects of expanded media to the screen. I loved when RTD's first era did that, with its loose adaptation of Jubilee as Dalek, adapting Human Nature for Series 3, and I love that idea here, adapting a comic. And the Star Beast is a prime candidate for that sort of thing. The Meep is a fantastic creation, and it's easy to see how the original story really dovetails with RTD's vision of the show. And yeah, it's just a very natural fit with his style of Doctor Who. And I do think that it really works as a reintroduction to his take on the show and to David Tennant and Catherine Tate after the time that they've spent away. I also like that the episode wastes no time getting into the action. Literally within 2 minutes, the Doctor has already reunited with Donna, and there's a spaceship crashing over London. We're just getting straight into it, and I think that was probably a smart move, because it allows the rest of the special to breathe. We don't have to have a whole bunch of unnecessary build-up, especially knowing that this pairing of the Doctor now back with his old face and reuniting with Donna is only going to last for a couple of episodes. It makes sense to maximize the amount of time that they have together. Admittedly, while I do enjoy Donna, I must confess that she's never been a favorite of mine, and I know that's an unpopular opinion. This episode more or less has not done anything to change that. Catherine Tate is a lot of fun, but I have to admit that she's probably the least interesting aspect of the episode for me. Even amongst the Noble family, I was more engaged with what was going on with her daughter Rose, and in particular her mother Sylvia was a big highlight for me. Jacqueline King was just fantastic, and I think a lot of the funniest moments of the episode came from her. And of course, with David Tennant back as the Doctor, but not the 10th Doctor, the question remains, how similarly is he going to play it, or how differently? This was something of a concern of mine, because on the one hand, if you just bring him back and play him exactly the same, what's really the point in having him being the 14th Doctor instead of the 10th? Or vice versa, if you bring him back and have him play it completely differently, then what's the point of having the 14th Doctor played by David Tennant? In the event, I do think the episode struck a decent balance. He's obviously very similar to the 10th Doctor in a lot of ways, and David Tennant hasn't really changed his performance all that much, understandably so. But he also brings a bit more of a emotionally vulnerable side to things. And even then, the amount of similarity didn't bother me as much as I expected it would. So yeah, I would say going into it, I was kind of concerned about having an old actor returning as a new incarnation, but this has largely sold me on that. I don't think it should become a regular repeating thing, and I do still think it would be great if there is a specific story reason why he's returned to this face, and that is indeed hinted at throughout this episode. But yeah, honestly, just as an excuse to bring David Tennant and Catherine Tate back together, I think it works, and it is a lot of fun seeing them together again. And of course, it's a nice touch that he's not wearing the same outfit. He's got something that follows a similar silhouette, but it's still very distinct. And he's got a new sonic screwdriver as well, which kind of weirdly, I mean, not that it really needs an explanation, but it's kind of just popped up with a couple of brand new abilities. And on the one hand, the ability to now make this little holographic screen to display information, I think that's really cool. That's a neat feature. On the other hand, it's also displayed the ability to create force fields now, and I'm not so keen on that one. That seems a little bit overpowered, and I do think that the sonic screwdriver has a tendency to be overused, and if anything, we should be stripping back its abilities, not adding more. Yeah, I don't know. It feels like that's going a little too far for me, and maybe I would be a bit more accepting of it if we had some sort of scene of the Doctor adding the ability for whatever reason. But just the fact that it appears out of nowhere is just really jarring for me. And honestly, I hope that it doesn't really get used much. Although I suspect the fact that they've introduced it now suggests it will be a mainstay feature now. But whatever, it is what it is. That's more of a minor gripe. I also want to briefly mention Unit's involvement in this episode. They don't have a huge role, which makes sense. They were involved in the original comic, where they also had a relatively small role. But mainly notable here is the introduction of Shirley Ann Bingham as Unit's new scientific advisor. Again, fairly minor role, but we know from RTD's comments that she's going to be playing a fairly significant role in upcoming episodes, and I thought this was a decent introduction to her. It does make me wonder what's happened to Osgood, especially since she was also absent from the Power of the Doctor, and neither of these episodes even mention her. So I wonder what happened there. But yeah, she seems like a fun character. Ruth Madeley's performance was really charming, and I look forward to seeing more of her. And as for the Star Beast itself, oh, Beep the Meep looks so good, don't they? I've been familiar with the Meep for a few years. My first exposure to them was through the Big Finish audio dramas, and how can you not fall in love with this character? Obviously not just the cute aspects of it, but then the big twist that it's actually this maniacal, bloodthirsty, evil monster. And I think that is executed brilliant here. The visual effects, both the combination of practical and CGI, are so impressive. And yeah, it just astounds me how effectively they've been able to pull this character off. And it's a brilliantly faithful recreation of the character for the screen. And there's a little hint at the end that maybe the Meep will be returning to face off against the Doctor again. And I hope we do see that come to pass, because it's just such a brilliant creation. Obviously, you can't really pull the same trick twice of it pretending to be this cute, innocent creature before going on this crazy killing spree. But even still, it's a lot of fun to watch, and Miriam Margolyes's voice acting is just the perfect fit for the character. I couldn't think of better casting than that. I will say, I do think the Meep was ever so slightly better in the original comic, mainly because there were a couple of moments I feel like played out better there. The ones that stick in my mind, one, I feel like in the TV version, the way the Doctor figured out that the Meep wasn't all that they seemed was a little bit weird. I mean, they do justify it. The Rarths are using stun guns that don't damage the cars, and the Doctor finds one of the unit soldiers still breathing, but it just felt like he pieced it together a little bit too quickly for me. And I like in the original comic that the Meep kills a couple of Rarth warriors before that reveal rather than after, justifying it as self-defense. And I feel like that makes for a bit more of an interesting revelatory moment, having those earlier hints of maliciousness. And on the flip side, actually, I also like that in the comic, even after the Meep reveals its true nature, there are a couple of moments where it tries to use its cuteness again to its advantage, you know, trying to convince people, oh no, I'm not actually evil, I'm this cute little thing. And in the TV version, once the Meep turns evil, there's no going back. They're just evil all the way through the rest of it. And I kind of wish in the Steel Mills we had a couple more moments of the Meep pretending to be cute to people to try and throw them off guard. And even if they know they're evil, it's harder to actively fight against a creature that looks so cute as that, isn't it? And on a similar note, I do think that the Rarth warriors, while quite well executed here as well, didn't quite get as much screen time and fleshing out as they might have deserved. They felt like a lot more of a substantial presence in the original comic, whereas here, I feel like they only show up in 2 scenes, maybe? I don't know, I don't really feel their presence as much in the TV adaptation. Ultimately, these aren't huge deals. Like I said, it's still quite well done in the televised version. But when you've experienced the original source material, you can't help but draw comparisons. And ultimately, I do think that the original comic was just a smidge better. And speaking of, I do have to bring up the resolution to this episode, which hinges on Donna being the Metacrisis and having her memories brought back. And see, this is the big issue with being familiar with the returning writer's work. Because if this was a brand new showrunner doing this, I would be a lot more on the edge of my seat and uncertain of what's going to happen. But knowing that it's RTD and knowing how he writes Doctor Who, despite David Tennant and Catherine Tate giving it their all, knowing that Donna was going to die, I couldn't really emotionally engage with it because knowing RTD, I knew he would never in a million years go through with that. I knew that despite what they're showing me, despite acting like Donna is going to die, something's going to happen to either A, prevent it before it actually happens, or B, if it does happen, reverse it 2 seconds later. And lo and behold, that's what happened. I mean, it does make sense that the Metacrisis would pass down to Donna's child, but it just sucks me out of the drama knowing that there's that kind of get out card. And it's a shame because the scene itself is really well done, but I just can't properly engage with it knowing that those consequences aren't sticking. And that's always been a problem with me with a lot of the new series. I feel like both RTD and Stephen Moffat had a lot of difficulty with letting consequences stick. And I get it, you don't want to have a downer of an ending, but I feel like you can't have it both ways. If you want a happy ending, give your character a happy ending. Don't pretend to give them a sad ending first. And yeah, that's the thing. I couldn't really get emotional about this. I couldn't engage with it because I was just sitting there waiting, okay, well, how long until this is made meaningless and it's reversed? So it's a shame. Now, to be fair, maybe RTD can still surprise me. There's 2 specials left, and we know Donna is not going to be sticking around after these 3 specials. So maybe something does happen in the Giggle where Donna either does end up dying, which I don't think will happen, but maybe, or she ends up having her memories lost again somehow. But I don't know. I don't feel like RTD is going to do that. I don't think he has the heart to go through with that. So, yeah, and I also really don't like the ultimate solution because we're told that the Metacrisis is still there, even though Donna was brought back to life. And then the solution to it apparently is Donna and Rose can just let it go, which that's a bit too easy for me. Like, I don't mind if they came up with some sort of other solution that was a bit more complicated, maybe had a bit more of a cost to it. But the fact that they can just say, oh, I don't want it anymore, and it just disappears, I don't like that. That's too easy of a way out. Even with the meta-crisis spread across the both of them, it just makes it feel like those 15 years where Donna didn't have her memories was a pointless waste. Because, I mean, I know it's not, because it was what allowed her to build her family. But, I don't know, if she could just have let it go the whole time, then why did she have to lose her memories? I don't know, it doesn't work for me, that ending. So it's a bit of a shame, because otherwise I found the Star Beast to be quite an enjoyable experience, but that ending did kind of let it down for me. Finally, why don't we talk about the very ending where Donna decides to join the Doctor for one more trip. And we get a reveal of the brand new TARDIS interior, which, wow, is it impressive. You can tell that extra money from the co-production deal is really being put to work. Because it is staggeringly huge. It does seem a little bit too empty, so I hope as time goes on there's a little bit more added to it to fill it out a bit more, because right now there's a lot of empty space. That's kind of the consequence of having such a big interior, but it is still very visually impressive, and I do love how it harkens back to that classic white TARDIS design, which we haven't really had in the new series. So yeah, it's quite nice. And then, of course, Donna has to go and immediately spill coffee on the console and blow it all up, leading into the next episode, Wild Blue Yonder. But yeah, so this was a fun time. Looking online at other fans' responses, I know that the Chibnall era obviously isn't hugely popular, and being the immediately previous era, naturally people are going to draw comparisons, and a lot of people I've seen say this is the best Doctor Who that they've seen in years. I can't honestly say that, even discounting the power of the Doctor, which was undoubtedly more of a fun experience for me, despite this being more tightly plotted. I think this was a fun episode, but nothing really exceptional, and there are a great number of episodes from the past few years that I would gladly rewatch over this one. It's, yeah, like I said, it's good, but I don't think it was anything spectacular. It's fun but flawed, and so for that I'm going to be giving it a solid 7.5 out of 10. Now, that being said, I do have very high hopes for next week's episode. The production team have been very careful to be secretive about it and not letting much out. Beyond the title, Wild Blue Yonder, and a couple of very brief clips, we really know nothing about this episode. And unlike a lot of people, I don't think it's because this is a cameo fest that's bringing back a lot of past Doctors and companions. I think it's just they wanted to have a mysterious episode that people didn't know what to expect going into it. And I love that, especially as someone who is online in the Doctor Who communities a lot. I do end up getting a lot of stuff spoiled for me. It's difficult for me to avoid, and sometimes I admittedly can't help myself. But even then, I know nothing about this episode, and that is so exciting to me. So I have high hopes for this. What little we do know about it is very interesting and very intriguing, and we'll see. But with that, Murgaman 4, over and out. Please let me know what your thoughts on the Starby Star down in the comments below. And I'll see you guys next week with my review of Wild Blue Yonder.